Okay, so for my first actual comic book bloviation video, I'm going to start with my all-time favorite comic book protagonist, Marvel Comics' The Incredible Hulk. Notice I didn't say superhero. I don't say superhero because I don't think it's accurate to call the Hulk a superhero, even though he's been a member of superhero teams like the Avengers, Defenders, and Fantastic Four. The Hulk, I think, is more accurately described as a monster hero. He just happens to exist within a superhero universe. So for this video, I'm going to talk about where I'd like to see Marvel Studios take the character next in their Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before I do that, I have to go into some detail about the comic book version of the character and his origins. The Hulk is a great example of how an initial idea for a main character can turn out to be in need of significant tweaking after initial publication in order to become something truly long-lasting and iconic. When Stan Lee initially envisioned this character, which was inspired by horror movies from the 50s like The Amazing Colossal Man and Them, he envisioned a man-monster who transformed into his alter ego at night, not too dissimilar to the transformation schedule of a werewolf. When Lee gave instructions to artist Jack Kirby, he told him he was designing a monster, but that it needed to be a good-looking monster. Lee knew that if the character was too ugly, he wouldn't be an effective protagonist, and the audience wouldn't be able to root for him as easily. The initial Hulk design was very different from what we later got. The Hulk was depicted as being not much bigger than a really big guy, coming in at about 6'6", but weighing about 800 pounds. His hands and feet were proportionally larger than normal, and Kirby gave him an angular head shape and a haircut that was intentionally reminiscent of the Boris Karloff Frankenstein makeup. But the most obvious difference was the Hulk's skin color. Lee wanted the Hulk to have gray skin, like that of an elephant or a rhinoceros. This was because he felt that this was a more serious color, and one that occurs in nature, but doesn't correspond to any race of man. Unfortunately for Stan's plans, when he got the copies back from the printer, he realized he had to make a change. Because of the four-color printing method that comic books used back in the early 60s, the printer couldn't make a consistent gray from page to page. On about a third of the pages, the Hulk's skin was gray, but on the rest, he was a variety of colors, including red, blue, orange, pink, puce, and mauve. Stan realized he couldn't have his gray-skinned monster after all. On one of the miscolored pages, the Hulk was green, and that's the color he chose. Stan chose well, in my opinion. Green is a color that signifies both life and nature and healthy things, but it also represents toxicity and ghastly things. Green is a color that can mean anything you want it to mean, be anything you want it to be. So while the Hulk does appear gray in the first issue of The Incredible Hulk, subsequent issues and many future retellings of the origin depict him as a green-skinned monster from the start. That's important, by the way. We'll be coming back to that later. The first issue tells the story of Robert Bruce Banner, a nuclear physicist working for the U.S. military on a secret gamma bomb project. This bomb represents the first attempt by mankind to harness the mysterious and powerful gamma rays. Now, before I go any further, I feel I have to be abundantly clear about something. In the real world, gamma rays are quite common. It's a category of radiation. There's alpha, beta, and gamma, and others as well. Alpha radiation refers to alpha particles of helium-4 nuclei. Alpha is dangerous to humans when ingested or inhaled, but can be stopped by a sheet of ordinary paper. Beta radiation consists of energetic electrons. Unlike alpha radiation, beta can penetrate a sheet of paper and also flesh, but can be blocked by some plastics and metals. Gamma radiation is the type most people think of when they think of dangerous radiation from a bomb. It's composed of photons that can be blocked only by sufficiently dense materials like lead or by sufficient amounts of water, like the primary shielding of a submarine reactor. The capital G gamma rays in Marvel Comics are something very different from the lowercase g gamma rays in the real world. Moments before the test detonation of the gamma bomb is to occur, teenager Rick Jones breaches security and unknowingly parks his car right next to the gamma bomb tower. Banner sees this in his binoculars, and instead of having army personnel drive out there and arrest Jones, he orders the countdown halted, hops in a jeep, and personally drives out to deal with the reckless youth. Unbeknownst to Banner, however, his lead assistant is a foreign spy and does not have the countdown cancelled, as ordered. Banner realizes this as he gets to Jones and realizes their only hope of survival is to use one of the lead-lined trenches nearby. Banner heroically throws Jones into the trench and is about to leap into it himself when the bomb goes off while he is in mid-jump. Hours later, back at the base, Banner changes into the Hulk for the first time. In the beginning, the transformations were caused by nightfall. The Hulk would remain until sunrise, when he would revert back to normal. This transformation idea proved too problematic for Stan, who wanted the Hulk's identity to be secret. So they tried a couple of different transformation ideas before settling on the idea that Banner would transform into the Hulk whenever he was dealing with sufficient levels of stress. Furthermore, it was also established that the Hulk's own physical strength and power would increase the more stress he endured. The upper limit of the Hulk's physical strength and power was never established and thus was potentially limitless. This was a good choice because it lent itself to melodramatic storytelling. It also meant that the Hulk could maintain a secret identity, at least until 1966, when Stan decided to drop the idea and have Banner become a fugitive when his identity as the Hulk became publicly known. Something else changed about the character in these early issues as well. Originally, the Hulk was not unintelligent. He talked like a belligerent, cranky old man. When Stan decided to have the Hulk confront the Fantastic Four in a special issue, however, he noticed that the Hulk's copy was a little too similar to that of the Thing, a rival monster and member of the Fantastic Four. So once again, something about the Hulk had to change. Stan developed a kind of Hulk-speak speech pattern for the character. The Hulk talked like a cross between Tonto, Tarzan, and Frankenstein, referring to himself in the third person and generally talking like a simpleton, frequently using words like smash and mad and puny. The Hulk's memory was also now impaired whenever he changed. Banner typically had no memory of the Hulk's experiences, and the Hulk's intelligence level was so low that he didn't realize that he was someone else some of the time. People kept calling the Hulk Banner, and this only served to irritate him because the Hulk thought they were confusing him with someone else, someone he'd never seen and could never find. This was the status quo for the character for nearly 20 years. In the early 80s, comic book writer Peter David began a historic 12-year run on the Incredible Hulk title, which had floundered in sales since the cancellation of the Kenneth Johnson television show earlier in the decade. Something was happening in the 80s with some of Marvel's characters. There was a trend of having characters revert back to earlier visual versions of themselves. For example, the Fantastic Four's Thing character briefly went from his usual rocky texture to his original lumpy one. Much like the Hulk, the Thing started out with a very different appearance. Jack Kirby called it dinosaur hide, but the Thing's skin eventually changed to the more familiar cracked riverbed look. In the 80s, Fantastic Four writer-artist John Byrne brought this look back for a while. Over in the X titles, the character of Beast was reverted to his original hairless look, ditching the indigo fur and claws. Storm also ditched her 80s mohawk and went back to her free-flowing platinum hair. I don't think this was a specific edict put forth by Marvel editor Jim Shooter or any of his successors. I think this was something that happened organically. Maybe it was just a product of the times. The late 80s saw a lot of pop culture throwbacks in movies and music, and comic books were no different. A series of events in the Hulk's comic caused him to revert back to his original gray state. During Peter David's tenure as writer of the series, audiences became reacquainted with Stan Lee's originally intended version of the Hulk. Instead of being the Jade Giant, he was once again the Gray Goliath, smaller, smarter, and more articulate. It is one particular part of Peter David's run that I think would make for excellent screen treatment. Previously, the Hulk had been on an adventure which climaxed with him being caught in a nuclear explosion thanks to his archenemy, the Leader. The following issue had established that the Hulk perished in the blast, and that all that was left of him was his nuclear shadow. The Hulk's supporting cast concluded their storylines and got back to living their lives. Longtime readers were shocked and wrote into Marvel Comics asking them why on earth they would kill off the character when the series was such a must-read. Marvel simply replied, "Wait until next issue." The next issue came, and we were introduced to a casino in Las Vegas called the Coliseum. The people in the Coliseum are doing what people come to Las Vegas to do, have a good time. But a guy who hasn't won anything all day becomes frustrated and begins to cause a scene. Security approaches him and asks him if they need to call Mr. Fixit down from his penthouse room. The man quickly rights himself and goes back to trying to have a good time. We then learn that this Mr. Fixit is in fact the Hulk, who is now calling himself Joe Fixit. He works for the Coliseum's owner, Michael Berenghetti. His job is rather simple. He is there to keep things in order, particularly when the mob show up to try to offer Berenghetti their brand of protection. Nobody realizes that Mr. Fixit is the Hulk because the general public still thinks the Hulk is A, green, and B, dead. For reasons that are later explained, the Hulk is able to remain the Hulk during the day now, albeit during the day and in particular under the direct rays of the sun, he feels intense pain. This, we come to find out, is a relatively recent development. The Hulk has been living in Las Vegas as Joe Fixit for several months now, and the reputation of the Coliseum and their chief of security is now well known throughout the city. The Mafia, too dumb to take no for an answer, continue to send people to the Coliseum to convince Michael Berenghetti to see things their way, and those people they send keep ending up in traction for 6 months. The Hulk even gets himself a girlfriend, a local aerobics and swimming instructor named Marlo, who has grown tired of men being intimidated by her height. She comes back from her first date with Joe Fixit positively glowing. The Mafia begins sending superhuman thugs after Mr. Fixit, starting with the enforcers on loan from the Power Broker, a scientist who specializes in supplying underworld organizations with superhuman operatives. Eventually, the mob starts hiring more familiar faces, like Crusher Creel, also known as the Absorbing Man. Creel, upon hearing Mr. Fixit speak, realizes he's fighting the Hulk. This proves problematic for the Hulk, as he really likes his current lifestyle and feels extra pressure to defeat Creel. Creel absorbs the properties of the Hulk's body while standing in broad daylight and immediately feels the same pain the Hulk feels during the day, or at least the same pain the Hulk would feel during the day if the Hulk didn't stay covered up in his fine clothing. The fight carries on, and in the shadow of the Hoover Dam, Creel desperately changes his body into concrete, and the Hulk decapitates him. Oh, I should probably point out that the Grey Hulk, unlike the simpleton green version, has absolutely no issues with inflicting pain and injury on the bad guys. He's an awful lot like Freddy Krueger in this regard, gruesomely yet comically teaching villains a lesson, while often delivering dry, pithy comebacks and one-liners. The increase in supervillain activity in Las Vegas eventually attracts the attention of superheroes like Iron Man and Spider-Man, all of whom agree to keep the news of the Hulk being alive and well, a secret. The Grey Hulk even has a fight with the Thing, who has recently been augmented by further exposure to cosmic rays. The Grey Hulk resorts to fighting dirty to defeat his longtime rival, giving him the Heimlich maneuver underwater and nearly drowning him. I had a laugh when Beast shows up at the very end of the story and tries to recruit the Hulk for a special mission, and the Hulk tells him, "Lucky for you, I'm in a really good mood," while the half-dead body of the Thing lies there. Eventually, it is revealed exactly how the Hulk survived the leader's bomb and how he got to Las Vegas. Seconds before the bomb went off, the Hulk was magically summoned to an alien world where he helped liberate it from a tyrant. As a part of his reward, the sorcerers on that world cast a spell on the Hulk, preventing him from changing back into Banner. But after about a year, the spell wears off, and that's when things get really interesting. Before, it was always the Hulk who was ruining Banner's life. Now, for the first time, the tables were turned and Banner was the problem. For a comic book, this run was psychologically rich. It was also a very fun read. In my opinion, if Marvel Studios were to delve into this material, they would have a real hit on their hands. This would especially work as a 10 to 12 episode series for the forthcoming Disney streaming service, as I think the best screen medium for the Hulk is television rather than movies. And for those of you who are saying, but wait, the Hulk was cured in Avengers Endgame. To that I reply with, so what? The Hulk's been cured in the comics more than once, and the Las Vegas saga came after one such cure. Speaking of the Hulk from Avengers Endgame, be here next time as I explain to those who will listen why the version you saw in Avengers Endgame is not the Professor Hulk. Consider it an informal part 2 to this video. Thanks for watching.